Hello, everybody. Believe it or not, you can have fun writing this term paper. What? You're joking, Dr. Eller. Term papers are boring. This is torture. I'm going to wait till the last minute to do it. That's what I'm going to do, and there's nothing you can do about it. Okay, but listen to me. Hear me out. Now, I really believe this is the most fun academic exercise that a person can do at WCU. When you're able to pick from a variety of topics something that you are interested in and express your opinion passionately but intelligently. That is interesting. Now, what does this got to do with me going into the medical field? Why do we have to do this? This has nothing to do. Ah, listen to me. Working with doctors and nurses every single day, I can tell you that when you're able to present facts to a patient in a thoughtful, intelligent, and honest manner, they appreciate it. The people working around you appreciates it. Your bosses appreciate it. I work with doctors and nurses constantly. I work with clients. I work with business owners. When I can just sit down and use critical thinking, I'm able to present the facts. And sometimes the facts are not good, but I can present them honestly in a very thoughtful manner. I get better reviews, I get promotions, I get hired, you name it. This is why critical thinking is so important. The second reason, and this is maybe the most important thing, don't let people lie to you. People lie all the time. They lie when they don't even understand that they're lying. I was talking to a family member the other day. I don't think that she understood what she was saying, but she said something about the coronavirus. And I knew that what she said was factually not true. Now, she may have believed it. She may have actually believed what she said, but what she said was factually incorrect. And I thought, you know what? If I was more gullible, if I was more vulnerable, I would have let her lie to me. I would have believed something that wasn't true. How many people hear something from a friend or from the internet and they spread it, and like a virus, it spreads? Don't let people lie to you. This is what this kind of exercise will teach you. Now, moving forward, these are different topics that you could choose from. We'll get into that in a second. You choose one. Here's the rubric that we are going to use, I'm going to use to grade you. Now, you'll notice there's a place that says not meeting expectations, approaches expectations, and then here's meets expectations. Here's what I would like for you to consider. Forget about not meeting expectations. Forget about approaches expectations. Don't let your brain go there. A great trainer, Jason York, said that to me. Don't let your brain go there. If a boxer is in the ring and he's getting beaten up and he's getting hit and he's thinking, oh my gosh, I can't do this, I can't do this, Jason will say, don't let your brain go there. Your brain should be so focused that you're going to meet expectations. Forget about the, you know, not meeting expectations. Forget about approaching expectations. Meet the expectations. It's not that hard. You identify the topic. Your sources are valid and interesting. Use APA format. You can do it. Trust me. Run your spell check, run your grammar check. Do a little bit every single day as I talked about in the other video. Okay? Don't let your brain go there. Don't be the big dog that jumps on the seat there when the little kittens are coming over. Okay? Moving forward. If you've never heard of the Lincoln Douglas debate, it was when Abraham Lincoln debated Douglas. This was before he was president about slavery. I'm not requiring you to read those debates, but they are truly fascinating. They're very long, but truly fascinating. And it set the stage for Lincoln Douglas debate competitions that go on to this day. Some of you may have been to these competitions. This is an exercise in critical thinking. Whenever you present a topic, whenever you argue with your husband or wife, or girlfriend or boyfriend, or with a friend or a family member, whenever you argue with a parent, you're debating. 99% of the time, we're emotional. You know, I'm right and you're wrong. And when the other person is speaking, you just close your ears and you just don't even want to listen. You're just waiting to speak. 99% of the time, all of us are guilty of that. If you did that in a Lincoln Douglas debate, you would lose because the judges would say you weren't listening to your opponent, you weren't reflecting on what they had to say, You didn't consider what they had to say. This is simply not good. One of my favorite movies is 12 Angry Men. It's about 12 jurors on a jury. One of the jurors, he just said, oh, the guy's guilty and that's how I feel and I don't care what anybody else says. There was another juror who would listen to both sides of the argument and he would consider the evidence and he wanted to make the right decision. Be that juror, okay? Be that person that rises above the emotion and actually considers both of the sides and presents a very good argument in your term paper. Believe me, when you do that exercise, it changes who you are just a little bit. It changes your brain just a little bit. All of us are guilty of being too emotional about certain topics. And as adults, especially people in the medical community, we have got to learn to look at the facts and maybe even consider that what we have believed for a long time has been wrong. Your sources: universities, science institutions, and government institutions. When I say government institutions, I do not mean, by any stretch of the imagination, politicians. Politicians just say stuff to get elected, as we know. Now, when I say government institutions, I mean non-politicians. Doctors who work for the National Institute of Health. Officers who work for the Department of Justice. Individuals who work for the Environmental Protection Agency. Individuals who work for the budgetary offices of the United States. The Comptroller's Office of the U.S., the U.S. Accountability Office. These are the offices that are filled with scientists, accountants, and researchers who are not politicians. They are paid money to do one thing and one thing only: present the facts. And I want to get into sources a little bit later. Now, Wikipedia. I'm actually going to do it now. Wikipedia, most popular. I don't mind you using Wikipedia, but I want you to use it in a different way. Now, Wikipedia is by far the most popular online encyclopedia in the world. I get some really good information from there. But do not cite Wikipedia ever for the rest of your life as a source. But Dr. Eller, you just said I could use it. You're confusing, and what's wrong with you? He's so stupid. I'm going to give him a low rating on his server. Listen, you can go to Wikipedia, and let's say you put in, for instance, crime in America, right there on the screen. Great, good. Go, you can read it, look at it, look what it says. Go all the way to the bottom first. Look at here. They have the Bureau of Justice Statistics. That's from the U.S. government. They have the crime report from the FBI. They have another crime report from the FBI. Oh, they have another source from the New York Times, the newspaper of record for the United States. These, and other references as well. I'm just showing the first four. So whoever wrote this article cited some pretty damn good, references. So I go to Wikipedia. It summarizes things for me. I like, oh, okay, here's some statistics. This is where they got it. I double check it to make sure that what they said is true. Not bad. Well, if it's not bad, why can't we cite Wikipedia? Because Wikipedia is officially a blog site. There have many things on Wikipedia that have been untrue. So you can go to Wikipedia as perhaps a way to find other references. But do not cite Wikipedia in of itself. I hope you understand the nuanced difference of what I just said. Okay? I use Wikipedia, but I use it to find other sources. Now, be careful of the sources you look at. Now, so for instance, MartinLutherKing.org. Let's say I'm doing a report on Martin Luther King, or I want to talk about him. Looks like a pretty legitimate site, right? MartinLutherKing.org. It's not .com, it's .org. Okay, not bad, right? MartinLutherKing.org was owned by neo-Nazis. It's been taken down recently. Kind of shocking, isn't it? See, a person can buy a domain name and own it. There have been people who have bought even movie star names, and the movie star couldn't do anything about it. Let's say I bought BradPitt.com, and I would own it. Not a darn thing he could do about it. Okay? This kind of thing happens. So be careful where you find your sources. Once again, universities, valid newspapers like the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times, got no problem with that. Forbes, that's considered a legitimate business magazine. But mostly, you can also look at, again, the government institutions, not politicians. So understand how to do valid research as people in the medical field. If I just say to you, you know what? If you eat, bananas every single day, you will never get a heart attack for the rest of your life. Well, where'd you get that? Well, I read it somewhere. I read it on a blog. Well, bananas are great. We all love bananas, but if I'm eating bananas and, also eating chocolate and drinking vodka all day, I could probably easily get a heart attack. So, again, be careful where you get your sources. That's the main thing I'm going to be looking at with this paper. The facts and the things that you say are actually backed up by a valid source. Okay? Now, quickly, the topics themselves. So the first one is abortion is not morally acceptable and should be illegal. This is what I want you to understand. Religious arguments tend to get lost if you choose this topic, and of course you can choose any one. When it comes to this topic, religious arguments tend to get bogged down in the minutia. Because if you come from a religious standpoint, a person who's debating you could easily just say, well, you know what? We have freedom of religion. So my religion says something different than what you say. So getting bogged down into some kind of religious argument tends to harm you in a debate or harm you in a term paper argument because a person could just easily say freedom of religion, and that it negates everything you're going to say. So I would just suggest maybe not taking it from that standpoint. Not that there's anything wrong with religion, okay? Religion's wonderful. But if you are talking to someone who's a patient in a hospital for any reason whatsoever, and you start to spouse off your religious beliefs to them on what they should do, they could even consider that to be unprofessional. It could even get you in trouble with HR because we have freedom of religion. It would be considered inappropriate, okay? Stick to a medical argument on either side. The universal ethics. Now, that's different than religion. You could say, look, this isn't about religion. This is just a universal ethic that, these nations and these societies have. I don't mind that at all. That could be interesting. Take a look at this next one. Pro or con. Abortion is not morally acceptable and should be illegal. If you believe the opposite, you can write a paper about that. Okay, so do know for every single one of these topics, you don't have to agree with the title. I'm perfectly okay with any of these. I disagree with what this title says. I'm taking the con argument. This is why I disagree with it. Or I do believe that abortion is not morally acceptable. You can take that argument, either one. But for any of the topics, you can do either side. Okay? Stick to facts. This is a very emotional topic. Rights, the rights of either a woman or the fetus. Look at, you could talk about the constitutional rights of either one of these populations and how you define it. So if you stick to that, pro or con, you're going to write a very good paper. Next. Physician-assisted suicide should be legal and available to those how to choose it. Okay. Again, a very emotional topic. I would look at pain statistics. That's the argument for. Even if you're running for it or against it, you can take a look at those statistics. How much pain a person is in. The right of an individual. People sometimes bring up the aspect of, well, we kill people in war, and that's okay. Or you can even, say if you're against assisted suicide, you can argue that war is wrong as well. Or in some cases, these are two very, very different things. It is perfectly all right. I saw a guy do a very good debate. He says, look, in the case of war, we're defending ourselves. With physician-assisted suicide, that's really not the case. So you can use that as an argument on either side of the fence. Would someone change their mind? I was watching a debate, and he said, look, maybe somebody wants to commit suicide, but what if next week they would change their mind? And if you are for physician-assisted suicide, you should address that question. Do family and friends have rights over someone? I've spoken to wives who said, one wife apparently took her husband to court to prevent him from trying to do this to himself. And of course, mental illness. If somebody's mentally ill, do they have the right to ask for physician assisted suicide? And that's a very interesting question, because if somebody is mentally ill, does that mean, okay, they don't have the same rights as people who are not deemed mentally ill, but that mentally ill person could be seriously in physical pain? So it's a very interesting, very difficult, but fascinating topic, and it's very tragic in many ways to talk about, but it's fascinating. So consider those things when writing this paper. Gun laws, again, pro or con, okay? The statement is very, very, plain, but you can say I disagree with the statement or I agree with it. You can start with that in your first paragraph. I would very much concentrate, regardless of what side of the fence you're on this, what does the Second Amendment actually say? Over 90% of people in the United States, if you ask them, they don't know what it really says. Okay? Number 2, comparing U.S. gun crimes to other countries. Definitely include that. Comparing states like Massachusetts versus Alabama, even if you just stick to the United States, are there more gun violence in certain states versus other states? The answer is yes. Explore that. Why? This is interesting. Why does Switzerland have low gun deaths? I'll let you know this right now. Switzerland allows anybody to have a gun. However, why does Australia have low gun deaths? Now, in Australia, they have very strict gun laws, and they used to not have strict gun laws. So, is that conflicting? I mean, pro-gun people say, well, look at Switzerland, and anti-gun people say, hey, but look at Australia. So either way, mention things of that nature and make your argument. What was the NRA's original intention? A lot of folks don't know that either. The National Rifle Association has incredible power in Washington, but what was their original intent? It has morphed into something else, but originally, why was the NRA formed? And did firearm sales go up and down during the Obama administration? There's a lot of confusion about that, and I strongly suggest, if you're writing about this, take a look at that and get an answer. Marijuana should not be legal for recreational use. Again, you can argue the pro or con. You can say, hey, I disagree with that. I think marijuana should be, or you can agree with it. You can write either way. Look at alcohol versus marijuana. Addiction, the harm, because alcohol is definitely legal. And hey, one person in a debate said, look, I'm for alcohol being illegal as well. I was like, okay. Because the person came back and said, but alcohol is legal. How can you be against marijuana? They said alcohol should be illegal as well. You can argue that. It's your paper. It's fine. Look at cigarettes versus marijuana in terms of deaths and harm. Does marijuana cause damage? Does it cause brain cells to maybe get slower? Does it cause any internal damage? Lung damage? What can it do? Look it up. There are different strains of marijuana, different types. Are some of them helpful in medical uses? I know that this is for recreational use, but even with that, people could say it's preventative of certain things. But there are different strains. What does it actually do to the brain? Why do people feel good or high or whatever when they do it? And some people, however, and this is interesting as well, they don't have a good reaction to it. There are some people who have tried marijuana and they have said emphatically they did not like the reaction at all. Prevented them from sleeping, made them hallucinate a little bit. Some people, believe it or not, felt nauseous. So people do have different reactions to it. But what does it medically do to the brain? It does change the brain. That's for sure. But what does it do? And what has been the research? I forgot my H there, sorry. What has been the research on this? Has there been a lot of research, or has there been very little? Now, next, organic foods lead to longer lifespans and less heart disease than non-organic foods. Again, you can do the pro and con. Who is funding this research? There is a lot of research out there, but who's funding it? Of all the research that we're talking about, It's very fascinating to see who's actually funding this research, okay? What is allowed to be in the food? What is the definition of organic? A lot of people talk about organic. You ask the average person, what does organic mean? They have no idea. How do they even judge that? Who judges it? How can you talk about organic foods and non-organic foods if we don't even talk about what it is first? And stay within heart disease. Now, this is a big trap that a lot of people fall into. For instance, for this particular topic, a lot of people who've written this paper for me before, what they do is this. They talk about, oh, it's good for your muscles, it's good for this, and it helps with concentration, and it's good for your brain, and that's all well and good. But they're not answering the question. And trust me when I tell you, when you're in the medical field, that your boss or somebody will say, look, you didn't answer the question. And when somebody just is talking to you in conversation, I asked you a question. I asked you a question. You didn't answer it. So don't get off on tangents. Stay within the question. Does it lead to longer lifespans and less heart disease? Those are the only things that you need to talk about in terms of, does it do this? But it is appropriate to say, let's talk about what organic food is first, because we can't discuss it unless we know what it is. This is why it will lead to longer lifespans and heart disease. Don't get off on a tangent about better eyesight and it makes your feet larger or whatever it is that they're claiming. Okay. Obesity rates in the U.S. have reached epidemic proportions. Again, you can go pro or con on this. Again, who's funding the research? What are the death rates? Look at the World Health Organization. They do specific research on America itself. Look at the Center for Disease Control, and I'll go ahead and give you a reference. If you're going to write about this, look at obesitysociety.org. They do look at very valid research, and you can check it out for yourself on obesity. It's a very good resource. E-cigarettes are just as harmful as tobacco cigarettes. Again, take the pro and con. Who is funding the research? Who's doing this? Okay. What are the death rates? Again, World Health Organization and the CDC. All right. Genetically modified foods are harmful to human health. I'm going to go ahead and give you a reference for this one. What you would do is go to Google and type in teen activist Rachel Parent debates Kevin on television. And it might be very, very interesting for you to look at, why does Kevin disagree with her? Who does he work for? Who is he funding? Why is he so passionately against Rachel Parent's argument? Okay? And it's very clear that he is. And it's also fascinating to me, because I want to show you this debate. Some people think this little teenager kicked this old man's butt. And others say, no, she didn't really do that. It was, he actually won the debate. So it'll be interesting to see, number one, who you felt won the debate. But she is I don't know if she's a teenager still, but she was a teen activist, still out there doing her thing, regardless of whether you agree with her or not. Very, very poised on camera. And the reason I want you to watch this debate, even if you're not going to write about this paper, you'll notice she mentions facts. She talks about sources. And she also talks about how some research has not been done. So the way she debates and the way she presents her argument, and she does reflect on what Kevin is saying, is very valid. Now, I'm not saying I agree with her or disagree with her, but she can debate well. Okay? What studies are there? And again, who are conducting these studies? Who's funding the studies on genetically modified foods? And if you find out who's funding the studies, do they have a motivation to perhaps make the data look in their favor? Crime rates in the U.S. are on an all-time high. Again, you can take the pro or con. You agree with it or disagree with it. Please look at the Department of Justice. There is no way on God's green earth that you can write a paper about this without looking at the Department of Justice statistics or the FBI. Are some places higher in the U.S. than others? I mean, some person just said, look, overall crime is down, but the guy who was debating him did a very good job of saying, but in some places they are at an all-time high. And then he also said, but certain kinds of crimes are actually higher. That yes, maybe some kinds of crimes are low, but some kind of crimes are actually much higher. So he flustered this guy and he won the debate. What does the trend say? Is it trending upwards or downwards? I mean, there are trends in the United States. And has the coronavirus affected this? Has it affected crime rates at all? High school graduation rates in the U.S. are at an all-time high. Again, you could agree or disagree. Has education rigor changed? Were we harder on folks back in the day? I will say that technology certainly has changed. We can do this now. When I went to the library as a kid in high school, I didn't have the internet. If you were going to plagiarize, it actually took some work. I had to find a book, I had to take it out, I had to kind of retype it and change the words a little bit and make copies and know the decimal system and put the book back and so at least I was learning something. So even plagiarism back then was somewhat difficult to do. And has education itself changed in terms of funding? What has the educational departments of this country, state and federal, done with the funding? Global warming is real and caused primarily by human activities. Again, this is a very, very, very emotional issue. Look at the pro or con. Also look at Drew Weston. Drew Weston measured people's brains when they were talking politics. What he found is that the intellectual parts of our brain shut down, and the emotional part of our brain went through the roof. So when it comes to anything political, and this is definitely a political issue, it's almost impossible for people to have an intellectual conversation. Don't let your emotional brain take you over, okay? Most people have an opinion about this based on politics and not facts. Stick to the facts. Look at the temperature changes. Are there any? What do the world scientists believe? Okay? Don't listen to the politicians here. Don't fall into the trap of the emotional brain. Look at the facts. You did great so far. You are doing great, and you will do great. Have questions? Email me, and I understand again, Blackboard problems and all that kind of stuff. Let's bear together. Thank you for watching. Talk to you soon.